It is the Friday edition of Not That It Matters. I hope you guys aren't getting tired of that theme song. I like it. Props to Sean Daniels of Castaway Creative for helping me pick that out with some good old-fashioned non-copyright music. And it's Friday, and the first repeat co-host in the history of Not That That Matters, because the repeats co-hosts don't matter, because we got Derek on Tuesdays, and we got Mr. Nathan Casey back here again on Fridays, and we had a lot go on in this past week. Nate, what's going on? How's Arizona?
Well, it's about the same as last week, which
Hot.
means, I walk outside and I just begin sweating. It's very fun.
Well, we're through the EuroLeague qualifier, or sorry, the group stages at the EuroLeague, the Euro 2020s. I'm all out of it. I'm all out of sorts today. But England have been through. They're into the quarterfinals as well. It was a good game against Germany, and I did say this last Friday. I said that if England were to beat Germany, they would have a pretty easy path to the final. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to win it all, as Italy and Belgium are playing, and both you and I agree that the winner of that should match up with England in the final. Now, that doesn't mean things can change, but that's what, on paper, should happen.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, England surely has to look at anything other than getting to the final at this point to be a failure, because they're playing Sweden in the quarterfinal, who they should be. Ukraine. I just expected Sweden to win that game so much. That's why. They're playing Ukraine. They should beat Ukraine.
Yes.
And their next matchup is either going to be the Czech Republic or Denmark. And of course, Denmark will have a lot of neutral support going on, right?
Yep.
If they make it through. But then on the other side, right, I really do think that, like you were saying, on paper, the winner of the Belgium-Italy quarterfinal, which is actually happening right now, I'm very upset that I can't watch the second half.
Sorry,
right
I stole you from that. I apologize.
It's okay. I've got it paused. I'm going to watch it afterwards. But the winner of that game, on paper, most people are going to consider to be the favorites for the rest of the tournament.
Right. So we'll see when we get there. England's tomorrow, Saturday at noon. But we've got a lot of other pressing issues. We know it's July. We know the Olympics that were supposed to happen last year are going next year. There's some big storylines coming out of there. First, Allyson Felix is a great story. We'll start with some positive here. Allyson Felix is punching her ticket to her 5th Olympics, and her first as a mom, and it's pretty substantial. She was dropped from Nike as an ambassador, as a person who endorses them, after she was pregnant. I heard some stories reading up on her. She would, since the parks were closed in LA, police officer would say, "Hey, you can't be here. We know you're Allyson Felix. We got to, I'll give you 15 minutes, and then I got to have you go home." Her and her husband would run up and down their cul-de-sac with the stroller, and that's how she would train. And during a pandemic training, how's that going to change? And 5th Olympics is huge, especially for a track star.
Honestly, that may genuinely be, 5 Olympics. That's 20 years.
21, because we missed a year.
21, they did miss a year, but that's 21 years at world-class elite level, right? That is nearly impossible for any athlete to maintain.
Especially in track.
Yeah, and track is a sport where, every single year in track, you hear about, this college athlete, this high school athlete, right, from the middle of nowhere, is going to go run, you've got a high schooler who's going to run under a 9.9
right
in the 100 meters or something, right? It seems to come up every year. So that's just a testament to how incredible of an athlete she is to be able to stay at the level and be competitive with it for so long.
It reminds me a lot of Serena Williams, right? She had a kid. She's had 2 now, and she comes back. She's still at the top of her game. Now, she hasn't won her while, Serena, but, she had a kid. And then with the pandemic, she changed her training regimen. It's huge. I don't want to put a dwindle on this, but her fellow track teammate, Sha'Carri Richardson. If you don't know by now, Sha'Carri Richardson is a 21-year-old. She goes to Oregon, and she's a track star. She qualified. It was a big story. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like she's going to be able to participate in this year's Olympics. She found out right before the trials and qualifiers, that her mother had died on a news report. So she didn't find out in a natural fashion, and her coping mechanism was marijuana. She tweeted out, "I am human," when all this came out, and I understand. And unfortunately for her, she does not. She if she understood the rules, which I'm sure she does. All these athletes do when they get into these things is it's a as what the Olympic Committee or the U.S. Trials Committee they considered an abusive substance. Now she can decrease. Nathan, do you have that wording still up of how she can decrease the sentence, if you don't mind?
Well, she already has decreased it basically. So the basically the understanding is that you can get suspended up to a year, like by the Olympic Committee, basically. But if you can prove that it wasn't for the use of enhancement and it was outside of like the sport world, then you can get it reduced. So the fact that it's down to a month means that it already is reduced.
Right. However, that month, we're 20 days-ish away from the Olympics. So,
well, and let's go through. So the Olympics use where's the acronym for this? The World Anti-Doping Agency is what the Olympics use for all of their drug requirements and for banned substances, right? So there's three really simple rules that they have that determine if a substance is on the prohibited list. One, it represents an actual or potential health risk to the athlete. Two, it has the potential to enhance or enhances sport performance. Or three, it violates the spirit of sport. And you only have to satisfy two of those to be on the prohibited list. So, I mean, we think of obvious performance enhancers like steroids, right?
Right.
Immediately are going to hit all three of those.
Right. You hear foreign substances or performance enhancing drugs, right? It's everything. And then the other thing that Richardson said, as I read this CNN article, she says, quote, "Everything I do from me comes naturally. No steroids, no anything. The incident was about marijuana. After my sanctions are up, I'll be back and able to compete every single time I step on the track. I'll be ready to compete for whatever anti-doping agency to come and get what it is that they need." So she knows the rules, and like you said, she only needs to satisfy those two things, and it doesn't look like she did, but she got it reduced. Now I will say this other information I'm reading here, it doesn't sound like she's going to be able to. It's unclear whether or not, it says here, quote, "It's unclear whether Richardson will miss the games altogether. She may still be eligible to compete in other events besides the 100-meter dash, such as the 4x100-meter relay, as well as any others that she qualified for." So we're still waiting on clarity if she can partake or participate in any other event other than the just the straight 100-meter dash.
The main issue here basically is that it's not that, she's obviously going to miss one of the events, right? That can't be changed. The main problem now is, even for the other events that she's technically not suspended for, this violation wiped out her trials mark.
Right. And that's how she qualified.
And the Olympic team uses these trials, right, as sort of a benchmark and a selection process for all their athletes, because they want the ones who are the most informed or the ones who are performing the best at the time. My question is sort of in the realm of, okay, I'm reading through these rules that are required, right, for something to be on basically the prohibited list, right?
Right.
Obviously, marijuana has actual or potential health risks, right?
Right.
It's not all that great for you. Does it enhance your sport performance?
Yeah, no, I don't think it does. And if you've seen, I think it was Dwayne Wade or there's a few NBA players that came out and tweeted that said, "Oh, she's getting suspended for a performance decreaser." Marijuana, as we all know, decrease your reaction time, decrease and slows the brain. So it's not like she can run faster while high, but that's just me.
And so then, if they're not using that wording, then it would have to be that they're ruling that it violates the spirit of sport.
Yeah, I don't think it does.
Well, the problem is it's all down to how you interpret what the spirit of sport means.
Right.
Right. Does it mean you're a bad sport, you didn't shake someone's hand. Sure, technically that violates the spirit of sport. In this sense, I'm wondering if they're sort of wording it on you're not representing the sport well, or the US well, or yourself
Right, but she
well.
was also
I'm
in a
not sure.
state where it's legal.
That's the other thing is, yes, marijuana is seeing a large amount of decriminalization in the US, right? That is not the case in a lot of other countries around the world.
Right.
And since the Olympics is an international event, right? Um, that brings up a whole host of other problems
Right.
because
Because if it's legal
yeah.
in some countries and not others, and it's clearly, it's not a performance enhancer. We know it's not going to improve her performance to the point where it's going to be an unfair advantage. However, I think, like you said, that spirit of the game is the complete and total talking point. Now, do I agree with the decision that she shouldn't be able to compete because she had weed? No, I think she should. It's weed, which, like you said, though, the counter argument to that is, well, it's not legal in other places in the U.S. It's not legal in other countries. It's a part of those rules, and that rule needs to be changed. However, the rule is there now. So she understood that rule, and I understand the grief. I understand that, and it's hard not to go to the things, and I feel horrible for her, and it sucks, and I want her to compete. But at this moment in time, that rule is in place, and there's not too much we can do about it, and she already reduced her sanction as much as she could.
And I'm just looking at the history basically of how this drug is treated by
Right.
the World Anti-Doping Agency, right? And the threshold for a quote positive test has already been upped by the agency, right? It's basically they're not looking for, oh, you smoked some weed of 2 months ago. They're not
Right.
looking for that anymore. They're looking for you had this the day of or the day before, right? That's how high your levels would have to be to ring a positive test.
Right.
And I mean, I really do think that this is about image management, I guess you could say.
1,000%.
Right? Rather than, because I mean, you look at, the evolving rules in the NBA, the NFL, right? The NHL, the MLB, right? Almost all tests that would have been positive are either not high enough to be considered positive, right? And I mean, none of those leagues suspend players for it anymore.
Right. I believe the NFL just, if I'm not mistaken, let me do quick research. NFL, and I believe the NFL is being less restrictive on that. I believe they kind of declined it. Yeah, the NFL won't drug test for players for THC in players from April 20th to August 9th. The new collective bargaining agreement that was passed last year includes relaxed drug testing policies. So It says here on Insider Comment, it says it's the first year players can celebrate 420 without discipline from the NFL. But so clearly in America, right? We're talking just American sports here. This is not international yet. That's, again, that brings a whole different fold into it. Leagues around America are starting to be more relaxed on weed. I believe the MLB is also doing something similar. If not, they're in discussions. The NHL, I know, is in discussions, as well as the NBA. And the NBA, as we know, is more of a player-run sport. So if the players are smoking weed, I mean, I'm sure they're going to push for it.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously it's an evolving policy for a lot of these leagues. Again, mostly because the substance is sort of going under a lot of decriminalization in the U.S. But I mean, I can, while I don't agree,
right,
with the decision that was handed down here on the athlete, right, I can understand.
And she said that too. She said that she understands, and that's the thing is, I'm human. I make mistakes. Everybody does. It's just so magnified because it's the Olympics after a pandemic, and it's a one of the top women track stars. Like it's a huge deal, especially with how social media is now, especially after quarantine. It's so hyper focused on it now.
Yeah, and I mean, I really do think that this came down to the fact that since it's illegal still in so many countries, that
Right.
the Olympic Committee basically said, okay, this doesn't meet, this violates the spirit of sport because you're consuming a substance that's considered illegal by, I don't know, 85% of the countries that are going to attend
Right.
the Olympics, right? So we have to dole out some punishment.
Right. You got to follow the rules. She's not above the law. And the U.S. track and field, they had a statement. It says, quote, Sha'Carri Richardson's situation is incredibly unfortunate and devastating for everybody involved. Athlete health and well-being continue to be one of the USATF's most critical priorities, and will work with Sha'Carri to ensure she has ample resources to overcome any mental health challenges now and in the future. And again, that also screams back to image. You think of marijuana, and to some people, that's not the most ideal coping mechanism, but some people it is. And when you grieve that hard, she lost her mother. She's 21, right? She that's young to lose your mother. That's very young. That'd be like if you or I were to lose our moms. Like, yeah. We may not turn to weed, but like, who knows? You're grieving. You're like she said, you're human. You make mistakes, and it was a high emotion time training, high emotion time getting out of quarantine. So she's, lots of mental health issues around every sport in the world have been coming out. Robin Leonard, Jonathan Taves are just two of the examples in the NHL. That was what the first thing she turned to, and it's legal in her state, so it's easily accessible. And I'm sure it's not the first time. I mean, she's, done it, and it came to a surprise to her. She found out over breaking news. So she wasn't even told. It was so she was just in a high of emotions. She was trying to cope. She didn't know how to act, and she just committed to something. And as unfortunate as it sounds, and it sucks that these are repercussions. Now, I think the silver lining here is that she still sounds like she can go and participate, just not in her marquee. What am I thinking about? Activity, participant, a sport, relay, so it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's something that had to be done. She's not above the law, and as much as it sucks, the rules were broken.
Well, I mean, you can say, definitely the rules are broken, but I mean, let's just give this a direct comparison to both Ryan Lochte and Michael Phelps, who, Ryan Lochte during, the Brazil Olympics caused like an international incident because he was so intoxicated that he caused a scene, right? And, Michael Phelps, well-known user of marijuana, right? I mean,
but did he ever get caught within those testing dates? That I don't know. I don't know.
That's the big one,
right?
Yeah.
So is this the first time that somebody's been caught? Are they making an example out of her? Who's to say? This is, I think, it's also more, like I said, it's more spotlighted because of everything we've been through in the last year and a half.
Yeah, and I know Michael Phelps did get banned, I believe, for 3 months,
right,
for it, but I don't remember or not if it was during competition.
Yeah, I don't believe it was. If it was an Olympic competition. So I don't believe he was ever caught during trials. I don't believe he was ever caught during qualifiers. Who's to say he was? We don't know. That information is not available to us. If it is, I don't know where to look. But it's a tremendously interesting story, and something that I would say as sports kind of come back into normalcy around the world and around the world in normalcy, especially here in the U.S., it's something that is not normal that should definitely be continued to be followed. And it's the Olympics, and yes, they don't happen every 4 years, 5 in this case. So my hope is that this story does not go under the radar, because if we see some similar issues like this that are treated differently, or we don't see a rule change or an adjustment of the rules, then that's something to keep an eye on. Because if this happens again, they say, oh, it's okay, it was a mistake, you're fine, then there's another fold to the story. Because once that changes, there's no telling what the difference is between that story and somebody else. And it's all a matter of information that's made available to us as the public. You and I are not insiders. You and I are not people who can dig like crazy. We can find stuff online. I know where to look. You know where to look to find certain information. But it's definitely something that I want to follow the story, when she goes to Tokyo, how much they talk about it when she's in Tokyo and things like that, as well as if the Olympic Committee and the U.S. track and field, team and organization say more about it.
Yeah, I mean, I really do hope she gets to compete in a event, right? Even if
Yeah.
she doesn't get to compete in her preferred one, right?
You know, we want her to
But
compete
we'll see.
somewhere.
Hmm.
Go ahead, continue.
But I mean, the one positive thing is that she's 21 right now, which means that, you know, even if this worst case scenario ends up happening and she's not able to compete at all, she is definitely talented enough and has the ability to go on and compete in the next Olympics,
And
right?
I'll bring it back to the beginning of that first story we talked about. Allison Felix is her teammate.
Hmm.
Who's to say Allison Felix, had a similar issue and that I don't recall, I don't believe she did, but she's going to
I
her
don't
fifth
think so. I
Olympics.
don't think
She's got
so.
that longevity. So that's somebody who can mentor her, bring her with her. I mean, when you go to a different country for 4 weeks at a time and you're with the team for once, you're going to bond with specific people, whether that's with your team, other people in the U.S.,
Oh
other
yeah.
people in other countries that you know of and have competed against in the U.S. for college sports. So,
Hmm.
there's people there who I'm sure are helping her out. I'm sure her family and friends are helping her out through. I mean, it's a tough time. I mean, if she can go and compete, she's going to run for her mother, and she's going to run to prove a point that that had no effect on her performance. So,
Yep.
the problem with that, there's just no guarantee if she can go or not, and it's unfortunate because
Hmm.
without without knowing, I mean, we probably won't know until maybe a week to 6 days before the Olympics even start.
Yeah, it's highly unlikely that we'll get any information until right beforehand. But I mean, speaking of image management.
Yes, image management. We have some huge news, and I love your transition. But before we transition fully to that, I do want to shout out Peak Clothing. That's peakclothes.com, PEAK clothes.com. That's use the code BENCH2, the number 2. Yes, we are recording the Zoom today. Check out the YouTube channel. It's just my name. You could search Max Miller Sports. It should be the picture of me. I'll be in a gold Vanos Gaming hoodie. Yes, shout out
Oh
Vanos Gaming,
God.
whatever. And I'm like this. It was a picture I took at San Jose State. Shout out them as well. But peakclothes.com. Use the code BENCH2 for $5 off. Good high quality stuff. We're working on some other stuff behind the scenes. We were on Mixcloud downloading stuff, but I know there was an account and stuff like that. So I'm moving everything over to YouTube. We're going to record the Zooms from here on out. The 3 episodes prior were on there. We didn't record the first episode on that first Wednesday. It was by myself. Good, worked out the kinks on that one. But use Bench2 on peakclothes.com. And the other thing that we can do now is players can do that in the NCAA. That clean transition right there. Players are now allowed to use their name, image, and likeness to commit a profit. And this has been
long overdue.
Long overdue. A
Long overdue.
major achievement in terms of college sports. The first name that I thought of when that came out was Reggie Bush, and he's come out and he's tried to get his Heisman's back as long as others. Barstool Sports has been in the news about this stuff. It's been very interesting to see how quickly. I mean, first things first, Nathan. I was on TikTok on July 1st, and I had just woken up, so I hadn't even seen the news yet. First thing I saw on my TikTok was the Arizona State punter trying to get a Domino's thing, and the caption was what NCAA sports players, D1 players, are going to be doing on July 1st, and it was him being like, before I kick a football, run drills, I work on homework with Domino's next to me, making almost like a joke out of it, but at the same time, like, you could see athletes doing that and trying to get sponsorships. And it's also big for something like you told me, like the NCAA sports. This is a long overdue thing, and I will say this is before I let you give your mini rant on it. Reggie Bush said it best. Reggie Bush says, quote, "It is my strong belief that I won the Heisman Trophy solely due to my hard work and dedication on the football field, and it's my firm belief that my record should be reinstated." So you're telling me because Reggie Bush made money off his name for being a star player because of his talent, he didn't earn his hardworking Heisman and stuff like that? What's the difference in a college player getting tons of fame on ESPN? You've got Trevor Lawrence, who's this big player coming out of high school even.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't make money off his name. Right? All these people on TikTok, right? There's these athletes that are not necessarily star athletes, but they're on TikTok with a name. There was a guy on Michigan who played 8 minutes a night, maybe even 6 for NCAA basketball, who had a TikTok following and went through his feed and went through his time in the bubble in the tournament in March. And he almost got reprimanded in it because it's, oh, you're making money off your sport. And he's like, well, I'm not making money off this. I've turned that ability off. So it's long overdue. And as somebody who covers D1 athletes, I think it's a great achievement.
Well, I mean, it just never really made sense to me that, college athletes couldn't make money off their face, right? I mean, the main argument people use, like as to why college athletes like are, they don't need to get paid or anything like that, is because they'll argue that they're on, half or 3/4 or full scholarships. Well, let's just say that not every single athlete on a sports team in college is going to be on a full ride scholarship or even a half ride scholarship.
Right. What if you walk on and become a star?
Or it's just, or if you're playing a sport that's not as, massive as like college football, for example, right? I mean, it just never made sense to me. The whole thing where it's like, I can't use my own face or else I get in legal trouble, right? That never made sense to me. But I've pulled this up. It says student athletes can now be paid in 4 ways. Third-party endorsements, so like you were saying, from like a Domino's sponsorship or something. Social media promotions, so something like Twitter or TikTok. Creating their own product or business activities. I feel like that one won't be utilized as much.
Well, I beg to differ. Before I say that, I'm looking up at some basic stuff here. I mean, Graham Mertz is from Wisconsin. He's a quarterback. He released a video on Twitter that revealed his own personalized logo, and he's going to use to sell his own line of clothing. He's a redshirt sophomore, and he passed for 9 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. And I got that off thesportingnews.com. And the first 2, endorsement deals that I see here are based off players wanting to create their own clothing line. They want to be, you look at Marshawn Lynch. I'm just here so I won't get fined. He still got fined for his hat because it was his own brand. It's similar to that. Is these players want to make their own brand. You got the TB12. He tried to trademark it. Marshawn Lynch has his own brand. I'm sure Aaron Rodgers. What's the difference in Aaron Rodgers being with State Farm in college as a star as he is now? It's the same thing to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the last one is personal promotions like autograph signings or meet and greets, right? But I really do think the 2 big ones are the first 2, third-party endorsements and social media promotions, right? And I mean, what's important to denote is that student athletes are not going to be paid by their university, right? No. Which I think was a lot of universities' worries was, I shell out X amount of dollars for the sports already. I can't give you anymore, right? But that's taken care of.
I think that's correct, too, because they're not sponsored by the school, right? If I go to Oregon, they're sponsored by Nike. Let's say I'm a star Oregon football player. Let's take Marcus Mariota, for example. Oregon player, won a Heisman, went number 2 overall behind Winston, or number 1 ahead of Winston. He was in that same draft. It was Winston Mariota. But sure, Nike knew who he was. I mean, what if he was, quote unquote, a brand ambassador for Nike? He's already wearing their stuff that's supplied by the team. So he would then have his own deal with Nike, allowing him to make extra money that the school does not. Like, if I'm coming in, let's say you're a star D1 soccer player. If I'm coming in as let's say Nike, for example, and I was like, hey, do you want to create your own brand of Nike clothing, shoes, soccer gear, whatever it is? And you'd be like, well, we already got Nike stuff through the school. And be like, no, we want to put your name on it. Before, you can't do it. What's the difference? Like, what's the issue with that? And if schools thought that they would have to pay for that endorsement deal, to me, that sounds wild, because why, if the company's coming and wants to pay somebody to be a part of the school, why would they have somebody else pay them? If they do, they're a third party. So then if they want to do that, it would be company pays school, pays player. Now, the school would want to take a cut because it's the college, but I don't understand why that was a major concern for colleges, and I'm sure that was one of the biggest delays.
I mean, let's just talk about some simple numbers, right? The NCAA clears $1 billion in revenue every single year, easily clears $1 billion, and look, like NCAA administrators and, business office people, right? They contribute to that, sure. But let's be honest, the majority of that money is being made because the players are talented or are good on the field, right? Or have great rivalries with other teams, right? It's the players that are the key part of that machine.
And I take another aspect to this, right? The coaches, let's take Nick Saban, head coach Alabama. He's with State
Farm.
God,
he makes so much money.
He makes so much money from Alabama. but he still takes endorsement deals. I believe he's with
Mhm.
Aflac, right? Him and the Doc walking around like, hey, you should use Aflac. He's making money off endorsement deals, even though he's making tons of money. And Nick Saban just signed a new deal.
Oh,
If I
it's a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah,
as
his
well.
new contract, once this loads really quickly, is worth so much money. It's Nick Saban. He signed a new 8-year deal in 2018 that's worth $74.4 million, which included
Oh my gosh.
$400,000 in annual raises and 3 payments of $800,000 for completing contract years. It's his 14th season. So, and he's making $74.4 million since 2018 for 8 years. So this would be year 3 coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the difference in him partnering with Affleck and a player who's getting a full ride scholarship partnering with or making their own clothing brand? And I have I have some more deals. The Raptor Mr. P, his son Hersey Miller, basketball player, signed a $2 million endorsement deal to become a brand ambassador for Web Apps America. $2 million. Here's another one for you. Buddy Boeheim, who became a name in this year's March Madness, was the son of Coach Jim Boeheim, his own coach at Syracuse. People called him Buddy Buckets. Well, he's now got a clothing brand, and it's a picture of him shooting a jump shot with the U in Buddy being the logo. Oh, by the way, the Syracuse logo is underneath it. So he reps his school. So schools can also use this as an advertising thing to say, hey, look, this person came to our school. They were able to get this big endorsement deal with our logo on it. We now have a bigger brand. Well, what does that do? Brings in more money, more revenue, more interest from outside sources. People wanted it. It allows these players to also choose, hey, well, if I go to this state, because there's only about 20 states right now that allow this. If I go to this state, I can't make money off my name. But if I go to California, like, why would I not want to go there instead of, the program might be better, but I'd be able to set up my future better even if I don't make the major league, whatever sport that might be in.
Well, I mean, the big thing, right? The other really big thing that the NCAA is not going to be happy with is, they've got about 20 states who have now passed this legislation, right? But basically, the D1 board of directors basically adopted that policy because of the issue you were saying, right? But the other really big thing is that, I mean, the Supreme Court of the United States unanimously went against the NCAA and said that the association can't limit education-related benefits for student athletes. It's another big thing. Right?
And when the Supreme Court gets involved and votes 9-0, it says something.
And it's, this was, they basically said that the NCAA violated antitrust laws with these restrictions. Basically saying that the NCAA is not being, good legally with the way that they're
and they've run into many issues over the last few years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and again, right, the NCAA is already seen as so many people as like the bad guy,
right?
Like
and you see somebody like
them,
LaMelo Ball. He went to go play in Australia instead of play a college sport, right? Instead of play D1 route. The G League, which is the developmental league of the NBA, now implemented a league where you can go straight to the G League, then through to the draft. So there was already becoming outlets because of this issue on players to be able to use their name and likeness, and outside sources figured out ways to attract players, top players. Look at LaMelo Ball, NBA Rookie of the Year this year, number 3 overall pick, to get them out of the same one and done in college and find a way to be able to utilize all of their outlets to make themselves money as well as progress as a player. And now the NCAA finally adapted this rule, which would allow the same thing.
Well, and I mean, let's just talk about the fact that the reason the NCAA was able to do all this was because every single college athlete was categorized as an amateur player legally. What?
Yeah. I mean, I understand you could get that amateur, but if you play in the minor leagues, you're still considered a professional player.
Well, I mean, honestly, the only time that I see sort of the amateur label at like the professional sports level, right, is in golf. when the only reason that someone is considered an amateur player is because they don't have enough like tour points or they don't have like enough wins to be on the PGA Tour yet.
Right, and they're still considered a semi-pro.
Exactly.
Or there's the amateur tour. And guess what? In that, they're also allowed to make money off their name. And I'll give you one more example. Kind of like Reggie Bush, a college football player in 2017 gave up his scholarship for his YouTube channel. It's from Central Florida. It was the kicker Donald De La Haye, and he has over 90,000 subscribers. This is from 2017, and I remember him. I saw him tweet this out. You know, he's like he was one of the big names, first to come out and say like, you know, I wanted to make money because I didn't see myself going to the NFL, and what I was doing, I enjoyed doing it, and there's no reason for me not to stop doing it because of my scholarship. I'm a kicker, right? It's not like I'm going to go crazy far, and he understood that, so he chose to stick with YouTube, and he lost his scholarship because of it. Now that's not a thing. These players can also create more content, whether that's vlogging, whether that's training videos, things like that, and make money off it. And it's simple things like training videos, practice videos, stuff like that. And I'm sure teams will there were teams that will, you know, they'll create rules and say, hey, you can't film during this time. And I'm sure the players will agree on that. Like, you know, you're calling plays, you got the meetings, don't film during those. This is not Hard Knocks. You know, like, be respectful of it. And I'm sure teams and colleges will understand that. But, you know, things like that can happen now, and it's great to see.
Yeah, I mean, you know, but now, I mean, the only issue that I can see starting with this is now you're going to start to see college athletes like, okay, well, now I need an agent, and now I need a legal team, and now do I need, you know, like consultants for this and this and this and this, right? Which is kind of, it's not the ugly side, I'd say, of like making money with sports, but it's definitely not the glamorous part of it, right?
So it's interesting. And then the other thing is Barstool Sports. I do want to talk about them. They are a huge company, and they may not have the greatest reputation. However, I would, you know, you think of Barstool Sports, you think of frat parties, you think of college kids enjoying their stuff and wanting merch. It was a big surprise to me when I was scrolling through TikTok and saw Dave Portnoy call what he likes to call an emergency meeting. And right after this happened, South Doyle, a running back at South Doyle named Elijah Young, he took advantage of the new name, image, likeness rules and messaged, just DM Dave Portnoy on Instagram and said, hey, I'd like to become a Barstool athlete. And Portnoy's like, sure, I don't know what that means.
Sure, okay.
and he said in his video, quote, send me a DM and you're a Barstool athlete, because they are for the players. They always have been. In every sport, it's always been like, oh, we don't like the organizations. Now they may not preach it well. You know, there's some stuff that I find funny and cool and stupid, but there's some stuff where they cross the line. Sure, yes, but that's their whole company. So Portnoy also tweeted out, Barstool Athletes Inc. is the most Barstool thing ever. There's no thought put into it yet. They have no clue what we're doing. And 2 hours later, it's the most powerful student-athlete organization in the country. They still have no idea what's happening. And the hashtags were for the players and Barstool Athlete. They want to do nothing but help the players, whether that's through merch, coming in and doing meet and greets, coming to the office. Portnoy is willing to help these guys out, because some of these people who are scholarships, we've heard the stories. Oh, Najee Harris, you know, he grew up homeless in the Bay Area in Oakland. He just got drafted in the first round by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was never able to make money off his name and likeness, and he was a star at Alabama, a star. So now he's able to make money off his name. If he's not in the NFL, but these players now make money off their name, and if they come from backgrounds where it's not as easy, which is very common now, which is unfortunate, they're able to help out sooner. They don't have to get to the NFL. Even if they go to the NFL, you look at somebody like Tebow, who didn't have the greatest NFL career, dude was college stud. Stud. All these people, Marcus Mariota not having the greatest NFL career, college stud. All these guys who have the one-hit wonders. I mean, the guy who hit the grand slam, the game-winning grand slam in Tennessee 3 weeks ago, he's breaking his shirt out with his bat flip king, and it's a drawn picture of him flipping the bat after the grand slam, and he's going to make money off that now. So what Barstool is doing, I think, is a great thing for the player. I mean, their hashtags for the players. The players want to feel welcomed and feel valued, and this allows them to do that, and it allows them to put value behind their name, other than I'm getting a scholarship to play for my school. yes, that's nice, but they want to with how much they get put on all these ESPN. I mean, college football and college basketball are the two biggest college sports. How often do you hear about these players in college football all year? I mean, Trevor Lawrence, we have not stopped hearing about him for 4 years. So it's to be for the players as a company like that, Barstool, a company that may not always be the greatest, is a great achievement and something that I think that they should be really proud of. I just think they need to get more logistical with it because if they truly have no idea what they're doing, it could spin badly. But they're smart over there. Portnoy is smart. He knows how to work over a crowd.
Well, and I think what you'll see sort of happening pretty quickly is now there's going to be sort of an arms race for like certain companies, whether that be Nike or Adidas, right? Or whether it be pizza companies like Pizza Hut or Domino's, right? To sort of snatch up the people that they want sponsoring their brands, right? Which will be really interesting to see, right? And I mean, again, right, we hope that this doesn't get ugly between athletes and their university, right, or the companies and universities. But I think that may be inevitable, unfortunately, because I mean, here's another question, right? A college athlete being sponsored by, I mean, let's say White Claw, for example.
Right.
How's the university going to feel about that when you have, I mean, theoretically, right, about 3/4 of your undergraduate population shouldn't be able to drink that legally, right?
Right. So I also do think, though, the caveat to that is White Claw I don't think will sponsor anybody that's under the age of 21.
Oh no, it's just an example.
It's a bad
right?
look for them if they do that. But I agree, and we all remember Johnny Manziel. In an interview with Barstool a couple of years ago, he said he received $33,000 from 2 transactions involving autographed items. He said, quote, "We're doing it all sneaky. We don't want it to get caught. We're trying to learn from everybody else's who got caught," Manziel said during his podcast appearance. "And I may or may not have gone back to this guy's condo and probably signed 10,000 pieces, and he gave me $3,000. Johnny Manziel was an absolute stud star at Texas A&M, and he got 36K for signing all that stuff, and I'm sure he would have made millions. He would have made so much money if this rule was in place while he was at Texas A&M. That's just an understatement. He made about $7 million when he was in the NFL. He would have made probably 2 to 3 times as much as that if he was able to do this while he was in college.
I mean, I just think the really simple way to think about this, right, is by considering college athletes who, let's be honest, are incredible athletes. Right?
Yeah. There's a reason why in the NBA draft, I mean, it's one and done.
Yeah. So, and to consider all of these college athletes amateurs for the sole reason of not allowing them to do things like this or justifying not paying them is really, I mean, and everyone knows this, right? It's nothing short of labor exploitation, right? Which, and everyone deserves to make money off the work that they do.
Right.
And now it seems, thankfully, that, college athletes will actually be able to make the money they deserve, right?
Yeah, they deserve this. They work just as hard as pro athletes, and I know colleges work just as hard as athletes.
Well, and they get a degree at the same time.
Right. That's if they stay for 4 years,
right?
Or if they go back, right? It might allow them to go back because the school treats them well. Their college athletic career shouldn't change much. If it does, then we'll look into it, but I don't think it should change much. But you go further into it. I mean, if these one and done players want to go back, they have a better taste in their mouth from their school and how they were treated when they were an athlete. Now, we're still going to run into some issues. Right? There's the Larry Nassar incident. There's the SJSU incident, and those are stories for another time, and those are horrible stories. But to allow this gives these athletes, these college athletes, a better feeling on how their college values them rather than just, we're giving you money to win accolades for this school, which you'll be leaving in 2 years. This allows them to participate, feel like what they did made a purpose other than winning a championship, right? It's like the NFL owners coming in and being like, we won the Super Bowl. No, the players won it. You helped the team.
But we
did it. Don't get me wrong. You won the team. You helped. And Jim, you put the team together. But that's one thing in the NBA or the NFL. The owners get the thing first. And it's like, you didn't do stuff. You watched from the box the whole year.
Mm-hmm.
But it allows them to feel valued under their people who are running that program. It allows athletic directors to use that as and coaches to use that as a way to recruit players. It allows these teams to go in so many more directions other than, hey, you don't want to pay for your college and you want to play a sport for us, come to this school. Now there's other polling options, like I've been saying, is let's say Utah doesn't have this in effect and California does. Why would I want to go to Utah to play football when I could go to San Jose State, make money, and they just won the Mountain West? So it allows for easier recruiting. It makes it more dynamic, and it makes it easier for colleges not only to make money, but it allows the players and the colleges to make money off the sport, endorsements. Because who's to say this player doesn't bring in an endorsement for the school? What if this player gets such a good relationship with a company that the company then wants to put an ad in a stadium? Well, that'd be like, oh, talk to my coach. My coach will put you in the right direction with the athletic directors and stuff like that. And now the college makes money.
It's a good deal for everybody except the NCAA, which is why this has gone on for so long.
Right.
Because the NCAA just keeps pushing it back or delaying it. Right. It's a change that makes sense for everyone except the giant administration that profits off it. Right. And thankfully, we should see some change for that.
We definitely should, and I think this has been a very good discussion. And there are other stuffs going on in sports, but those are the main kind of topics I wanted to discuss. There is some stuff. You're in Arizona. We can move forward here. Again, check out peakclothes.com, bench number 2 like Derek Jeter. There is some other news. We have an NBA finalist, and it's the Phoenix Suns, and Chris Paul gets there for the first time in his career. I don't know if you saw the shove by Patrick Beverley.
Oh, yeah.
And I will say Jay Crowder of the Phoenix Suns said it best, is when that happened, we knew we broke them. They mentally broke that team down. That team couldn't handle it. They were mentally exhausted, physically exhausted. And after that push, Jay Crowder said, after we knew we were going to win. We mentally broke them. And they did. And the Suns have not had an easy path. They beat the Lakers, whoever was like, oh, they got to play the Lakers. Poor Suns. They're going to lose to LeBron.
Oh, the Suns, right? Their one good season that they finally had, and now they're out in the first round.
They get through LeBron. Yeah. Then they got to play Denver. Yes, they were missing Jamal Crawford. Or Jamal, I think it's not Jamal Crawford. I think it's Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray, that's who it is. And they had Jokic. They got through him, and now they're through the Clippers. And I think the Clippers series would have been different if they had Kawhi. I really do think that. But good for the Suns. The one thing is it's a Phoenix sport, so are these fans going to stick around for next year like the Hurricanes, or what's going to happen?
I mean, I watched the clip of that push, right? And because it was circulating around everyone, I was really, really confused about it. So I rewound the game back to see if did he chirp something really bad at him beforehand, right? And of course, that's what everyone was
That's what Beverly said at the start.
That's what everyone was. Yeah, that's what everyone was guessing, right? Is he must have said something real bad, right? But then you go back and watch the replay, he didn't say anything.
Chris Paul just stared at him, and how often? I mean, Beverly stared at him the game before and then stepped over him. Now Patrick Beverly is not a star player; he works hard, good, but man, that guy is not good at basketball. I mean, he's better than us; he's a pro. But Chris Paul made a shot, walked back to his team, and went and just stared at him. Didn't say a word.
Well,
it doesn't warrant a shove from behind. That could have ended so poorly. He's lucky it didn't.
What happens if you shove the player down, right, and the dude's nose goes into someone's knee and you broke the guy's nose? Right?
Or he falls, his knee, his foot stuck on the ground, he hits his knee breaks his foot, he wasn't ready for it. He was relaxed. His knee twists in a way he's not ready for. He's off balance. He's stepping forward. He falls on his leg weird. It breaks. There were so many potential issues. He falls on his head and there's a concussion. And it was Chris Paul. He missed the first 3 games of the series because of COVID. Sorry, first 2 games. So he's still getting his footing back. We don't know the kinds of effects that it had on him. That push by Patrick Beverly, and it was by Patrick Beverly. This guy is always like, oh, it's Pat Beverly's guy you got to have on your team. You work hard, good at defense. The guy loses his head. right? I think every player on every team in almost any sport needs that meat and potatoes, that grind guy, right? You look at the Warriors; they got Draymond Green. You've got Matt Barnes was a big guy. These guys on the teams, the Knicks, they had Mitch Robinson.
This can apply to any sport.
Any
right?
sport, I mean, you look at the Lightning. That third line, the third line in hockey is typically called the checking line, right? You need those grinder guys, but when they go and cross that line, and they're ineffective on the floor in case of basketball, then it's not okay. You look at Brad Marchand of the NHL. Yeah, he crosses that line, and people hate him, but as soon as he's on your team, you love him. He crosses the line. He doesn't cross the line as much as he used to. It used to be really bad. He gets people to take penalties. He's a great penalty killer himself, and he scores 100 points, all while getting in the other face of other teammates. So Pat Beverly needs to be more effective before he can really go over the line like that, because that could have ended so horribly, and that's crossing the line in basketball that's just too far. There's one thing in a hard foul, stepping over a guy. This really crossed the line for me, especially for a guy like Chris Paul, a guy who's well respected around the entirety of the NBA that almost every fan is rooting for unless you're going against him.
Well, and the thing you really need to understand, right, and this applies to all sports, right, there's sort of the phrase of you leave it all on the court, the field, right, the rink, or whatever.
Wear your heart on a sleeve.
Right. I can understand, right, there's some pushing and shoving after a play because everyone is super intense into the game, really into
especially
it. They want to win
playoffs.
So badly, right? Especially in the playoffs, right? You see this in the NHL. You see this in the NBA, right? You see this with, major soccer matches, right? That's very common.
The hard fouls in soccer and things like that.
Exactly, right? But the minute the whistle goes, right, play is not happening, right? Or on a timeout, right? Or a drink break, right? Or just when
play is stopped.
Play is stopped, right? You can't lose your head like that. And it makes sense what the Suns were saying. Then it's like, as soon as we saw that happen, we knew that we were going to win that game, because we knew that just from watching that, your guys' mental is gone.
Right. They're mentally not there. They're not involved in the game. You look at the New York Rangers and the Tom Wilson incident. Yeah, Tom Wilson, crossed the line and it was had. But, I mean, the whole thing now is Tom Wilson broke the New York Rangers. He made them fire their coach, their GM and president, and there were fights, and they lost the game in horrible fashion the next day against Tom Wilson and the Capitals because he got in their head. Now, do I think what they did was warranted? In response, to an extent, yes. But I think after first two fights, I really don't see why they kept fighting. And that's how you knew, we mentally broke them. And the Capitals did the right thing. They sent Tom Wilson to the locker room. They said it was a knee injury. He was fine. They were protecting his player because he was going to get hurt because he was getting targeted. But if you can break a team down like that mentally, you better be ready for pushback, because teams are going to cross this. These guys are high compete levels. They wear their hearts on a sleeve. So it's something that these moments keep happening a little bit more often, that these teams and coaches need to understand, keep your head. And the whole thing is keeping your head in any sport. Stay calm, cool, collected, and you might be able to get back in the game. Because at that time, the game was like a 12-point game. Mm-hmm. Couple threes, you're in the game. Couple buckets, you're in the game. So they lost their head, and I think Jay Crowder said, once you and I keep referencing, Jay Crowder said, once that happened, we knew we mentally broke them.
Sport, any sport, right, is equal parts physical and mental, right? I think you could really make that argument for any sport, right? It doesn't matter how good I am on the ball in soccer, or how good I am at, handling the puck in hockey, or how many shots I can make in a basketball game, right? If you don't have the mental preparation to play as a team, right, and to follow a game plan, because, sure, you can argue that there are exceptions around, right, in any sport.
Well, I'll bring it back to hockey. There's that code, right? You hurt my player, I'm going to fight you. Now, there's times where the code shouldn't come into effect, like John Tavares. There was no reason Corey Perry should have had to fight for that. That was completely accidental. But let's say, there was a bad play, trip, a risky play. You run in, this isn't even fighting. In the playoffs, in regular season in the NHL, if you snow my goalie, I'm coming to sit in your face and say, hey, don't do that. There's that respect. And the hockey players, they know that's coming. And basketball, there's the hard foul. A hard foul is coming back, or a hard box out. You're going to play someone hard. In the NFL, I'm going to hit you harder, but the goal is to do it cleanly. When you lose your head, that's when it becomes dangerous. it becomes violent, and it crosses the line in the terms of really bad things can happen.
I mean, like you were saying, basically, there's rules for a reason in every league,
and there's the unwritten ones. Baseball too. I'll put it out and go ahead.
But I mean, like hard physical plays, right? Have a place in every sport, right? But
except for golf, except for maybe DeChambeau and Koepka.
Except for golf,
DeChambeau and Koepka. Who knows? That's going. Who knows?
Maybe except for golf, right? But they have a place in contact sports, right?
They go contact sports. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and in contact sports, right? They have a place in contact sports, and they're not going anywhere, right? But like you were saying, it's so important to understand that there's a safety risk to all players, right? When things start getting heated, and it's losing your mental in a game is just as bad as pulling a muscle and not being able to continue, right? Because, you pull a muscle, you're out, right? You can't play for your team anymore, right? You lose your mental, not only will you'll still be able to play for your team, but then are you contributing? Are you
hurting the team? At least when you're out, right? I hear that, I think of Ronaldo 2016 Euros.
Oh, God.
I mean, in what? The 10th, 15th minute? He hurt his knee and came out of the game. What did he do the rest of the game? On one leg, he tried to continue. Then they took him out of the game, so he's able to be replaced. Somebody who will be more effective than an injured Ronaldo. He may not be Ronaldo. Actually, he won't be Ronaldo. It's Cristiano Ronaldo. But what Ronaldo did was stand on one leg the entirety of the rest of the game from the 15th minute to the 90th minute through extra time.
And he advocated for his team.
And he helped motivate his team and coach his team. And he's well respected. He's the captain. He understood that if he went down and his morale went down, the rest of the teams. He didn't want his team to be like, oh no, Ronaldo's hurt. We lose, guys. He, from the sidelines, kept his head and pushed his team. And you know what happened? They won the Euros. And that made Renato Sanchez, now a star player in the making, who's now what? He was 18 at the time, so he's 22, 23 years old now. A bright up-and-coming star. He gave him confidence. That Portugal team, yes, they didn't do well this year, but that moment of going down and still continuing to be there for his team on and off the pitch, whether injured or not injured, starting the game or not, helped his team stay morally upbeat, helped them stay morally and mentally prepared to be able to have faith in themselves. They can win the game. And it was against Germany, I believe. France, yes, France. And France ended up winning the World Cup 2 years later. So that's not an easy matchup. And France versus Portugal. Now Portugal's a little bit better than I think they were 5 years ago.
Yeah, they are.
But that moment with Ronaldo, it's the perfect example.
Yeah, there's some great images of, he's got his knee all wrapped up and taped up, and he's got a giant bag of ice on it, right? And he's standing next to his coach in the technical area, and he and his coach are like pointing in the same direction and yelling at players, right? So it's, again, right? Sport is so much, equal parts mental and physical,
Right. So, in fairness, congrats to Allyson Felix. It'll be interesting to see what happens in Sha'Carri Richardson. College athletes, D1 NCAA college athletes can now make money, and staying mentally strong is key. Congrats to the Suns. The Yankees stink. Ohtani gave up 7 in the first inning. Yankees then lost. It was pretty embarrassing, and I might need to get Kevin back here on Wednesday to really bash him again. But Nate, it's been the Friday edition. Thank you. Any last words?
I think Italy wins the Euros.
All righty. Well, Italy wins Euros against England?
Yeah, I think so.
This has been Not That It Matters. Thank you all for listening. Go check out the YouTube, Max Miller Sports. This has been Not That It Matters. Thank you all for listening. Check us out. We got much shows on deck. Keep it going. Thanks, guys.